Today's book is Joel Salatins Folks, This Ain't Normal. I wanted to start out, should have had it ready. What page was that on? 221. The opening statement for this. This is pretty interesting. My favorite statement of the book. I think it's actually more beneficial to take responsibility for the problem. The learning that happens when we look at a mess and assume it's our fault enables us to grow as individuals, to listen to what life is trying to teach us. To assume these animals are getting sick because some disease fairies sprinkled foo-foo dust on them may sound nice for a while. But ultimately, we don't become better people with that attitude. Instruction comes when we humbly ask, what did I do to make this happen? At that point, our eyes and ears, indeed our mind, open and we can hear things others may not hear and see things others may not see. The others are too busy blaming someone or picking up something in a bottle to remedy the problem. To reiterate, he's talking about concentrated animal feed operations, and they're called CAFOs. Okay, to reiterate, CAFOs have only been possible in the age of pharmaceuticals. As large as the drug industry is in America, it should give us pause that we are ingesting far more drugs secondhand through animals than we are taking directly via pills and injections. As the surviving viral or bacterial diseases adapt with increased virility, CAFOs are betting that new concoctions from the pharmaceutical industry can stay at least a few days ahead of the mutants. Are we as a culture really willing to bet on that? Hi, I'm Jacob Richards, and welcome to another episode of Healthy Living. Again, we're talking about Joel Salatins Folks, This Ain't Normal. I love it. Throughout the book, I listen to the audio too. I like both. I can listen to it a couple times that way, read and listen, get more out of it. But he presents something that our grandparents didn't do and that is strange and unnatural, and he'll just stop and say, folks, this ain't normal. Right? So I hope you can gain a lot from this book and pick it up. You know, it is a big book, but what I like to do is read the table of contents, maybe read the first chapter, and then read all of the summaries at the end of each chapter. And you can get some great nuggets from that book. Put it down, read something else, and refer back to it. So today we're going to talk about, in his book he talks about germ theory versus terrain theory. So we know Pasteur brought up the germ theory, but then Antoine Béchamp, I gotta look up how to say it. Béchamp, I think the Béchamp guy, he was proposing the terrain theory, which means basically what Joel Salatin promotes, and that is you have a farm that's balanced microbially with many different kinds of farming going on without too many things being scrunched together, without too many animals being scrunched in a tight space, allowing free range. Animals stay healthy under the terrain theory, and then thus humans. That's why I love this book, because you're like, oh, it's farming, but that's where our health begins. And it has to do with healthy animals. If you eat meat, I eat a small amount. I used to be vegan, vegetarian, raw foodist for a year. I lost 20 pounds. It was a great cleanse, but everyone's body is different. I don't just say, hey, this is one way, because there's some general principles, and that's what I try to really focus on. But then what works for you, you have to figure that out. And sometimes getting off of everything and reintroducing foods, you find out what you're allergic to, or just what you thrive on, because you can probably tolerate a lot of foods, but you're not thriving on them, and it takes away your energy. So it talks about how if you have healthy animals, what they do to animals, it really applies to humans, because a lot of people, if they get meat that's full of pharmaceuticals like antibiotics, hormones, and then pesticides from the food those animals eat, that doesn't go away. It becomes concentrated in their meat, and then we ingest that. So you think, oh, I don't take antibiotics, I don't do that, but you're probably taking a lot through the animals. That's why a lot of people, they can't tolerate meat. They get sick on it. So I'm all about, whatever you eat, just make sure it's clean. If you like eating bacon, get the cleanest bacon you can get. Okay. He talks about his farm is beyond organic, and that's really the European standard. Ours is organic. Europe is beyond organic. Their standard is organic, and then they have a standard that we call sometimes organic, but it's beyond organic, right? He said in one chapter he shows you how to make a despicable farm, which is basically those CAFOs we just mentioned, the concentrated animal feed operations that are coming under a lot of fire. A lot of people, the animal rights people, hate it, and people that get that meat, it's not energizing meat, is the way I look at this. I'm a biohacker. I love Dave Asprey and his podcast. When I eat, beef is against my blood type, but I have it occasionally, and if I have some bison or some organic beef, I feel great. It's fine. But if I get non-organic, especially from a fast food place, my energy level goes way down. I feel terrible. And that was back when I knew nothing about health. I knew that going to a fast food place, I'd feel junky for the next 24 hours. So he shows you how to make a despicable farm, right? And then his farm is called Polyface Farm, where he has a lot of teaching that goes on at his farm. It's really the model. They call him the high priest of the pasture, from the New York Times. Gave him that title. So from the notes that I got, I like to put notes in the front and the back, as you know. This is a pretty interesting book. Page 138. I just read, you might have seen the book that I did about wheat belly. I'm going to do a part 2 and part 3 on that. But Joel Salatin believes feed no grain to the animals, because they didn't do it 100 years ago because it was too expensive. Grains, he talks about, were labor intensive, and before mechanization and the industrial age, grains were like a delicacy. And then grains are also, it's the seed that you're making bread into, and it's been shown that people with disease, if they get off grain, at least for a while, that those problems, and especially diabetes, William Davis talks about that in his book. I got the book right here. He said, if you have a disease, a problem, you need to get off grains, because grains are basically produced from seeds, and they wouldn't feed those to the animals because it was just, it costs too much. So today, with fossil fuels, cheap energy, mechanization, they're able to feed grain to the animals, give them hormones, And it's funny, because that what the farmers know, what he talks about in here, is if you want to fatten up a cow, guess what you do? You give him grains. But what are we told? Eat eat more whole grains, exercise, and don't eat any fat. So a lot of people, they're having issues with the grains. Your body, maybe you're fine, but my whole thing is, there's a book I want to read. It's about it's called Smart Fat. I just heard the guy who wrote it. He was on a podcast, and he said, the diet books of the past that talk about good fats and bad fats. He says he's beyond that, which is, how clean is the fat? You can eat, depending on your body type, what you believe, you can eat grain. You can eat less grains. That's what I've found. And I feel so much better off of sugar and grains because it creates inflammation. And that, you got to look at the wheat belly talk. But so if you eat fat, that you actually lose weight, and they're just saying, hey, try it out. But the conventional wisdom we've been told is you're gonna die if that happens, right? It's kind of like a new Atkins diet which has come out. So, and that's what Joel Salatin's all about. He eats pretty much everything, but he eats very clean, good food like my grandparents did when we would eat out of their garden. I felt so good. You can't describe it, eating food right out of the garden. If you've never had it, like plucked right off the stalk and just eat it. You get full right away too. You don't eat as much. It's like nutrient packed, energy packed. And that's another thing. What's the energy of the food? Has it been gassed? How long has it been trucked across the United States? Is it in season? Is it right for your blood type? Is it right for your genome type? And those kind of diets are coming. California is working on the genome type diet. What's exactly right for you and your body. And you can figure it out through methodical way. And I'm going to touch on that in the course that's coming, about how step by step to figure out what works specifically for you. There's some machines out right now, like the Zyto machine, that can tell you just the nutrients in the food, supplements in the foods, and the kind of alcohol. It's like beyond the blood type diet, catered to you. But they're going to come up with something where you can just swab your mouth, the saliva, and then they'll put it into a biotech machine and it'll spit out everything that you should be eating and drinking based on genome types. So it'll be very specific and the most accurate diet. And I've found that when I follow a diet, that they have some truth for me and for my body type, but I usually can't take every single thing that they say and apply it to me. I try it. So I want everyone to be biohackers, to be experimenters, and experiment with things, of course, that are good for your health, not the bad ones. So he says, quit feeding people herbivores grain. And I believe we should eat little grain. You can read up on that. But if it's clean and it's in moderation, organic grain, like I have some rice and not too much more. I'm doing basically the paleo right now. I'm not doing much of any grains, but I'll maybe have some rice chips sometimes. That's the best grain from what I've read. Okay. And of course, not only feed the animals grain, but spread them out. Make them all to be free range. Talks about eating in season, and when you eat things that were grown out of season, like cheese, for instance, we all want summer cheese if you really become a foodie and you get into it, there's so many nuances to food, and that's basically what this is about. You know, we want to enjoy our food, but we don't want to have terrible health because of it, right? I've recently gotten back into cheese, not too much again. I love this, page 137. Feeding the soil and the plants and the animals chemicals, folks, this ain't normal. An interesting fact that half of all food fit for human consumption never gets eaten. So there's a lot of waste going on. We say, oh, there might not be. They justify the CAFO, the factory farms, that we need to produce enough food for the people. But he has remedies for that. If there was just some change in legislation, and there's a lot of waste. There's plenty of abundance right now. Plenty of food, and they say, oh, it's because they produce. Look how much we're producing, but there's also a lot of waste that he goes into with the factory farming. So basically, I love this book because what Joel does for the health of his farm and animals, we can apply to us. So, oh, okay, this is a good one. He has some good learning lessons in here, because whenever he didn't have quite the right tweak to keep his animals healthy and his farm healthy, he admitted it, figured out what the problem is, and then he turned around and so much more successful. So he said, if we ask what have I done wrong or can do to correct the situation, then the learning lesson begins. You say, oh, it was them. It was, remember in the Bible, Adam and Eve. Everybody's pointing the finger. But if we say, yeah, I messed up. If some people have argued, if Bill Clinton just said, yeah, I messed up. I shouldn't have had that affair. I'm human. I'm sorry. That people, and not try to cover over, not lie about it, that people would have been better with it. People are still be upset, right? But admit it, move on. Some people think you should never admit your faults, and I don't agree with that. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible's very candid about people and their mistakes, and that's why I like Joel, because he says, here's where I made a mistake on my farms, and so we got to do the same with our bodies and the way we take care of our family. If we make a mistake, this, and then just do a little step better. Don't try to do too many radical things with your family, just so that they don't notice so much. Just then you can't force it on anybody. I always talk about health, and then I gotta back off sometimes because people think that they're getting pushed into something. I'm not pushing. I'm just brain dumping and trying to process my information. And I like telling people about it, and that's how you learn, right? That's partly why I do these videos, because I want to learn. So go out and teach someone. Read the book and teach people, your family, what you've learned. They can benefit so greatly, right? So this is great. The learning happens when we look at a mess and assume it's our fault. Enables us to grow as individuals. Exactly. So easy to say, but difficult to implement, right? So go out and get the book by Joel Salatins Folks, This Ain't Normal. And he says, he reads his book on the audio, and I love to hear his southern accent, because he's just an authentic guy. I really like him. Hopefully I can get to meet him sometime. He does some speaking engagements, so I've heard. And as always, my mission in doing these videos and to provide a health course is for people to be healthy mentally, morally, physically, and spiritually. Good health to you.